Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I have with us the latest mission team that went to Albania from Manna Church, West Florida. We have Justin and Katie Humphreys, Sharissa Waller, Jamie and Matt Perry. We are missing Tom Crenshaw from our church. And then this team was also joined by two others from Manna, Colorado Springs, Sharon and Meredith, and then Dr. Doug and Debbie Hume from Texas. So our time in Albania, we've been partnered there for many years. This was our sixth trip. And on our first trip, we were introduced to a couple, Bonnie and his wife, Samira Verjani. And they work there. They're native Albanians, and they have a heart for missions. They've grown up in the church. And they teach in English school where they use the gospel in their English lessons. And from there, their church has just grown and flourished. And so we've come alongside them. We've partnered for many years supporting that ministry. And then with them, we've reached out into other villages, sending the gospel into the remoter regions of Albania. I mentioned Dr. Doug and Debbie Hume. They are medical missionaries. They've been lifelong missionaries. Most of their time has been spent in Thailand and China. And they do these evangelical medical clinics where they go in for a week or two, see a lot of patients, and then the local church meets each patient and gives them a gospel presentation as they're there. And they've seen tremendous growth throughout the world in the local church there. So the Verjani family has mentioned that missions or medical problems in Albania have been really hard to handle because of the rampant corruption. There's a lack of faith in the doctors and a lack of trust in that they're getting the right information or the right resources. And so they've asked us for medical support throughout the years, and I finally was able to connect them with Dr. Doug and Debbie. And so they were able to bring in their style of clinics. This was our second time working with that. We learned a little the first time and kind of pivoted and tried to make it a little more Albanian, a little slower, a little more relational. So Justin, you were leading this trip. What else do you want to tell us about the itinerary and the plans that we had?
Yeah, so this trip was really, like you said, it was a continuation kind of diving into the medical missionary side last year with Albania. And so this year we were trying to kind of build on the success we had last year doing the medical clinics there, but kind of expand it a little bit more. So last year we focused mostly with Elbasan, which is the city where the local church is at in Albania. And then we did I think a clinic in a village in the mountains in a town called Bulchar, and then we also went to another village called Grbova and did medical work there. But this year we wanted to do the same, but we added a few extra spots. And so the plan was to reach out to two new villages, Linia and Strelcha in Albania, along the trip. And then also on the front end, we plan to do a few clinics in Greece. So the Albanians have been working closely with some churches in Greece because a lot of the Albanian population goes to Greece looking for work. And so they wanted to go support the Albanians that were there in Greece with some medical missionary work there and try and help build the churches there too. So we're trying to kind of compound on all of it and just do a little bit more. So the plan for this year was to go in and go to Greece first. And then we actually planned a day on the front end to do kind of some Christian touristy things, because with the opportunities to see some of the early church there in Greece, in Thessaloniki and Philippi, we ended up doing a day for sort of that, kind of get prepped, see some of the early church history, and then get into clinics the next day. And so we spent 2 days in Thessaloniki, and then we went to Albania and did, the normal. We did a couple days in the village, or in Elbasan, a couple days in the villages in the mountains, kind of bouncing around until we finally finished up our trip. So, yeah, that was the main idea, was to just bounce around a whole bunch of different places, do medical missions, meet Albanians where they were at, both in country and nearby in Greece, and just carry on. The way we carry out the missions there is we usually use the medical clinic as a way to bring people kind of in the door to then counsel them and share the gospel and evangelize. And so it's a really kind of cool tool to try and get people beyond the church, or that the church can't normally reach maybe, in the door to help share the gospel, which is pretty nice way to do it. It really works well, and you're serving two kind of purposes. Not only are you helping them spiritually, but then we also can provide some kind of physical relief, whether it be medical diagnosis or just helping confirm, give them a second opinion on something they've already seen, giving them some medicines that they can't get easily or that are too expensive. So that was the overall goal, was just supporting their missionary goals there for our local Albanian partners and reaching the communities they wanted to see.
Okay. Thank you. What made you guys want to go on a vision trip? Why'd you sign up in the first place?
I think for Matt and I, this was our first trip. So we've always wanted to travel and to go on a mission trip together. And we were just in a season of our life, and we heard about this and the great experience last year. So we just decided to jump in and do it, and we did.
I know that I'm called to missions. This is my fourth mission trip out of the U.S., one mission trip in the U.S., and I just know that's my calling. And I try to, so my calling is teaching girls self-defense wherever I go. And, I find ways to slip that into the mission trip whenever we get chances. But of course, the main focus was medical, and that was amazing to see. But I have a heart for missions. That's just, anytime I hear about a mission trip, I'm like, ooh, do you have room? What are we doing? Can I go? So.
I'm kind of the same as Teresa. I've ever since I knew I was like in physician assistant school, and I wanted to go overseas and be a medical missionary. Like that's just kind of been my thing I've always wanted to do. And I wasn't able to, and while I was like working, and finally, I'm in this opportunity now that God's opened some doors, and I've been on 3 trips now, so about to go on a 4th. So it's so rewarding. It's so amazing to see God work in the ways that you don't get to see him work sometimes in America, things like that. So it's just great.
Yeah, and this is Katie and I's second year. We went for the first time last year, and that was our first mission trip. And I won't get into the story because it's kind of long, but like God called us clearly to that mission last year. So we went on that one, and it was so amazing. I mean, it was so life-changing that just like being able to see God provide and move in ways that you just wouldn't see here at home most of the time. I mean, the things I saw happen in like a 10-day span was just incredible. And it was just really kind of cool to see just God work and just to be able to be there and be a part of it and to help these communities that really, I mean, deep down at a human level are not that different than our own. They have very similar struggles. It just looks different. But they are in tougher parts of the world, and they don't have some of the opportunities that we have, and life is a little bit harder in a lot of ways for them. And so it's really cool to be able to see that all happen. And I think that really, like, we built a lot of really amazing relationships with some of the locals there last year, and we got to see like the impact that it had. And so, I mean, we were all in as far as going back, and this won't be our last time in Albania unless God has other plans. So.
Yeah, I kind of want to, having got to go on that trip with you guys last year and see the way that God worked in you, I want to just kind of share for everyone that like you don't have to be at your peak Christianity to choose to go on a trip, but God will use that trip to up-level your Christianity and your faith. And he just opens the doors for you to walk in faith, to try new things. It was really cool to see the way that you guys grew and used the power of the Holy Spirit to minister to others.
I know we're talking about like this year's Albanian trip, but that was, I've told this story before, but last year's Albanian trip, it was one of those things where everyone kind of had a role in the team. Like you had been before, Katie had done medical work and she was going to do that side, and everyone else had kind of done mission trips. And I was like, I don't know why I'm going on this trip. I was like, I don't know what I bring to the table. But man, God did some crazy things, and it was really, really cool. And that was a huge like life changer for me. So it's really cool. This year was a bit different because it was, going back. Now it's kind of like, it doesn't have the novelty as much anymore, but so it just looks different. But yeah, it's still amazing.
It's a different kind of special.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a story about something impactful that happened on this trip?
I think for me, working with kids has never been something that I considered a strong suit or something that I was really passionate about. But there was a couple times where we had opportunities to do that, both in Greece and in Albania. And especially the Albanian one, I think that day was just kind of an off day. And maybe I was pretty tired. And it was like, okay, you're going to go hang out with the youth. It's like, I I don't want to. but I knew I was there for a reason. I knew that, God just uses people right where they're at. So it's like, okay, let's go do this. And those kids were just such a blessing in both situations. Like they were so relational. There wasn't this this kind of barrier that we put up between ourselves sometimes and other people, especially when we get in these new environments where we're doing evangelism or we're reaching out to people that speak another language in a different country. And the kids were just wide open and always happy to engage, and played some American soccer / football with some of them, the teenagers in Elbasan, and they were fun. They gave me quite the ribbing too, though, because I'm not athletic. but it was really just an absolute blessing, and just to kind of I've always been able to appreciate how people from other cultures, and being in the military, we travel all around, and we see how so many other people are so much like ourselves. And so that's kind of been in my past, but then to be able to tie that into this kind of multicultural approach to God and to Christ. And I mean, it's just really cool to be able to do that. And then to also know that a lot of these kids, we were sharing a gospel message with them that day, and they do go to the English-speaking church, but a lot of them come from families that aren't Christian families. They might even prescribe to be Muslim or something like that. And just to realize that I'm out here playing soccer with a kid who really wants to be engaged with me, and get to share the gospel with them. It was really neat. So God worked through that, because it was not at all what I was called, what I felt like I was called to do, but obviously I was there for a reason.
Piggyback on what you said real quick for the sake of the listener. So last year in Albania, that was the same thing. We had something very similar where like going into a foreign country and trying to share the gospel in a country where you don't understand the culture, you don't know the language. Like I was like, when they were trying to do some of the evangelistic stuff and the counseling, I was like, I don't know about all that. I don't know that that's what I'm called for. I think you guys should handle that. But it was one of those things that like God really made me like open up to it, and I like opened myself up to opportunity, and like He really can change you through that when you go there and you be a little bit more vulnerable and let God just do whatever He needs to do and get out of your comfort zone. And I think it's really cool when you do, because then I mean He can change your life completely, and it's put like my whole life on a completely different path. And it's really cool to see like what God's even done through you guys through the trip. And so it's really cool, and I really hope that like the listeners take away from that is like just be open to letting God do different things in you and really get out of your comfort zone, because you'll see God move some crazy ways that way. So I'm glad you guys had that experience.
Yeah, it was really cool watching God. It's so much easier to recognize it when it's happening to other people. Like they don't even realize it, and you're like, oh my gosh, you just did this? And they're like, oh, okay, I did. But like watching Jamie just like blossom with these kiddos, because Jamie's very quiet, and she's not like she has, she talks, not like she doesn't have anything to say. She's amazing. Love her to death. But whenever she was with those kids, like she just like bloomed, and it was just so amazing. And I mean, she wasn't 100% on board with it at first. She was she was kind of like, you sure I'm with the kids? Because I could do something else, like anything else. But then once she started working with those kids, it was God magic. That's what Jonathan calls it, is God magic, because she just opened up and the kids listened and they loved her, and it was great. And then Katie, oh my gosh. So I love Katie to death, and Katie, I have so much respect for Katie, but there was one clinic where Dr. Doug had stayed behind to take care of his wife because she got ill. And so the whole clinic was on Katie's back, and like it was Katie or nobody. And she stepped up, and I know she wasn't feeling real solid about it at first. We all had faith in her. We knew she was going to do amazing. And she did. She did so amazing, and she was able to take care of everybody. And it was so awesome to just see her step into that like head leadership role of the clinic. And, and I know deep down she wasn't real happy to have it all on her, but she excelled, and she did so good. And even whenever we thought we were done, like one more person came in, and she was like, oh man, but then she went ahead and, I hope I'm not stealing one of your
No,
stories.
no, no.
She ended up ministering to him, and he spoke English, and they started talking, and didn't he get saved, or?
Yeah, he was very interested. Definitely took a Bible to start reading
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
And that was all because, I mean, Katie had already shut down. They had people going and delivering medicines to different houses, and Katie was just trying to like and recoup from seeing all those people. And one more guy walked in, and she could have easily been like, "We're closed for the day," but she was like, "No, come on, we're gonna help
That
you."
thought crossed my it did cross my brain, and we're sitting there, and the day that she's talking about, like, because I'd been by myself for 2 days seeing clinic, I was beat. I was exhausted, and luckily Dr. Doug had came and met us that day, so he saw the patients that day, and I was just, man, I'm exhausted, and my brain was mush. Like, it was probably not safe seeing patients that day, so I didn't. And and so they went out and did some house calls, and I stayed back, and this guy walked in, and he's just like, well, I just wanted to come see what you guys were doing, because our clinic was set up in the middle of a cafe, which is kind of cool. And so it's the little town cafe on the roadside, like on the roadside, cliffs, beautiful, like mountains that you could just overlook. And so he came in, he's like, I've been having this sore throat, and I heard that there was a medical clinic here. And so I was like, okay. He's like, I was wondering if I could be seen. And I'm just like, well, all of our equipment's already gone. Like, we've packed up everything, and, and everybody's getting my drift. But I'm just like, I just sat there and I'm like wrestling with God, like in my head, like, do we see him? Do we not? Well, I didn't fly all the way to Albania to tell him no, So I was like, I hear you, God, I hear you. So I was like, yeah, come on, let's go sit over here and I'll come see, I'll see you. And so we ended up seeing him for his sore throat, and turns out he lived in England and he spoke English, and so I didn't even need my translator. It was just, I just kind of just ministered to him for a little bit, and I said, that like everything happens like according to God's plan. And he's like, well, maybe God planned for me to have a sore throat and for me to walk in here this like today. And I'm like, I definitely think that was the plan. And so I was like, well, like, are you open to like reading the Bible if I gave you like a Bible to read and stuff like that? He was like, yeah, absolutely, and stuff. So, he took the Bible, and he'd been going through a difficult time in his life where one of his parents passed away, and so I think he started reading it, and I think, one of our local church partners are going to follow up with him at some point, and, kind of see where, like, how he's doing and going from there. But definitely, like, you wrestle, like, with your fleshly desires, but that God's got, better plans if you just listen to him. So.
All right. What was your favorite aspect of the trip?
Coffee. I don't think you can say that. I think that was
The quality of
that's
coffee?
right.
I was like,
It was
coffee.
the quantity.
The
The
coffee
quantity of
culture?
coffee. No, it is a coffee culture. I mean, really, we get to stop for coffee quite a bit. But really, I think that kind of highlights the way that this mission trip was set up. This was our first one, and we've only heard about other mission trips where you go to kind of an established thing, you do an established task, you share an established message at an established time. This was not that. So we had the opportunity to kind of, I won't say meander, but to travel throughout, infiltrate throughout Albania and Greece as well. Because I was just thinking the other day about that great coffee shop that we visited in Greece and met other missionaries and encouraged other people. So, it really was that time spent on this kind of a mission trip, forming relationships. I know that Jamie and I still keep in touch with, and I know a lot of us still keep in touch with folks that are over there, just in a supportive way, in an encouraging way, but also helping them form relationships in the community was just such a big part. And that all happened mostly over coffee. So, those coffee stops are very, very valuable in accomplishing the mission. And it's kind of a cool takeaway too, because, coming back here, it is those moments that we spend, that we slow down and actually we give up our own time and our own ambitions to do whatever, and we actually spend it with somebody else, that we actually make those connections where we can be authentic with someone else and share our faith. So it was really cool.
I love that you highlighted that, because that's actually a really important aspect of the way that we design our trips and why we call them vision trips instead of mission trips. And, in our American culture, church culture in general, like a lot of the times the mission trip will be about going in and getting a task done. And we really want to step back from that and focus on the people, the relationships, and the people who are living there day to day, in and out, and just to get in there and to pour into them and to be in relationship with them. We know, in church leadership in America and everywhere, like leadership can be lonely. And when you're in a different culture with less support and less churches around, it's even lonelier. So those chances that we get to go be a friend, to go build them up in a relationship is just, it's huge for them. So yeah, it looks different, but it's important, very important. Yeah.
I think one of my favorite parts was definitely like the relationship building. It's really awesome that like we went last year and like met there's still a core crew of people that like still like attend the church, lead the church, teachers in the English school and stuff like that. And so it was really cool going back this year and getting to see everybody. One of the teachers had a baby, and getting to meet him, and just getting to have dinner with one of the couples that we got close to last year, and just kind of catching up and seeing how like God's working in their lives, and just how we can be like praying for our partners there, and just really pouring into them. It's just like Justin said earlier, we share the same problems. We're still humans that share the same basic problems, just in a different part of the world.
Yeah. I think, one of the Bible verses that comes to mind is like talking about sharing each other's burdens and how that's how we can help the body. And the Verkani family specifically, they were going through a particularly busy and stressful time in their life. Both of their kids had just had major surgeries.
Within a week of each other.
Yeah, within a week of each other, major surgeries. And then their daughter's getting ready to graduate high school and go off to college, and they're moving into a new church building, and they've had issues getting the Durkis family actually bought them a new vehicle. And so they were working on getting that there and getting it fixed up and ready to use. And then they had issues with one of the other vehicles. So they've got a lot of stuff going on right now. And so it was really nice. Unfortunately, I think we might have been a bit of a burden to their schedule already. That was already busy. But at the same time, it was nice to be there and get to walk through that, help encourage them and support them like through all that stressful time, because I know that was a big thing for them. And just being able to have people to spend time with them and share stories and talk through it all, and it's nice to be able to be there and encourage them and like work through those problems with them, which was really, really cool. Yeah, it's be able to support them that way. So it's nice, even though we're 10 hours away, we can still be there to support them when they need it.
Well, it was really neat to see God come through in all those different moments, because there were so many little like hiccups that could have been big deals, but they weren't. Like cars breaking down, and so we had to do the rental cars, and 3 of those, and then one of the hotels that we were supposed to stay at wasn't finished, and they literally went and bought the beds and like put on the sheets like as we were driving up there. They were setting up these rooms just for us. Like the rest of the hotel was not finished, but like that was finished. And then that was the same village where they had this like community center, but the ladies weren't like supposed to go in there, so they asked us to do the clinic where their normal clinic is, which had no electricity. And it was getting dark, and so we saw as many people as we could, and we could have just been like, okay guys, we can't see, but so we're all busting out like cell phone lights and flashlights, and
poor Meredith had her headlamp.
And so we're doing all this in the dark, and everybody's just and we saw everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it was neat for us because we got enough military backgrounds, we just overcame, adapted, but I think it also proved to them like how invested in them we were, because we could have easily been like, guys, it's dark, like we can't see anything anymore, we have to shut the clinic down, we gotta go, this is it. But we didn't. We kept going, and we just adapted and overcame, and just found a way to make it work. And I think that they really took notice of that. So
Yeah, that's a good pivot into our next question. What aspect of the trip was the most difficult or surprising for you? And I'm going to have you start with Jamie. I heard you got a new nickname on this trip.
My new nickname is Taffy because I was stretched beyond what I could even yeah. So those that know me well know that I worry a lot, and I'm very fearful of things, and I'm working on that, especially after this trip. But just so a story I'd like to share is one of our days in Greece, we were told we were going to go visit a Roma camp. And so just unsure of the people that we were going to be with. This was kind of a last minute addition to our itinerary, I believe. So everybody was very unsure. And so I was definitely unsure. If other people are unsure, I'm going to be scared and think the worst is going to happen.
Can I get some thoughts on that real quick? Yeah. So just so everyone who understands, who's listening, can understand. Like, so the Roma community is it's a gypsy population, sort of, that's outside of the main city limits, and they live totally outside of the system. Like, they live outside of the government system. They do weird odd and end jobs. They don't have the same moral standards. Like, it's very rugged. They live in tents mostly, and this wasn't part of our original plan. Like, my original understanding was we were going to go and we were going to support like Albanians working in Greece. But I guess that one of the fellow believers that they work with in Greece, this is kind of like a mission of theirs, is to reach this community. And so we went in, but we were, who are these people? Like, what do we need to know? And they were like, yeah, don't take IDs with you, don't take your phones. They're like, don't even lock stuff in the car. They're like, just be careful. These people are like, what?
They burned down their
Yeah, so there was a church in the community. The church had a tent in the community that was there before, and they got in a fight with the community, and the community burned down the church. And then they built a new one like across I don't want to say the street because it was really just a patch of dirt, but across the street in the community, they built like a new church building. And I'm like, what are we getting ourselves into? We weren't prepared for this. It's like, what? So we were all like a little on edge going in that day, but we were like, I don't know what we're about to go into. We just got to pray up. Like, let's go. It was crazy.
So with all that being said, I was like, why are we doing this? But we went, and I will be honest, I was being very selfish during the drive there. I was like, this is just a terrible idea. Like, I don't want to do this. And then they said, you're going to work with the kids. And I'm like, I don't want to work with the kids. I want to write something. I just want to do administrative stuff. But I was just but I was working through it on the drive there. And we pull into the camp, and it was just unlike anything I've ever seen. It's okay. It's just not good conditions, and I just was overwhelmed. So anyway, we get there, they start setting up, and I was like, well, I have to do something. They're not going to let me just write anything. So I just went and got a ball and went outside, and here come kids. And Matt came out there, and I think there were a couple of other people out there, and it just ended up being my most favorite part of the trip. Because, and I didn't need a translator. You don't need translators with kids. Like, they couldn't speak English, and just being with them and spending time with them and playing outside. And we did the bracelets, the gospel bracelets, which I didn't need a translator for that, but just being able to share that, and they were just so happy. And Matt was able to make cross necklaces with them, and they were so happy, and just so much joy in these kids that had so very little. And then it was time to leave. I did not want to leave. Saying goodbye was very hard. And just these sweet girls that I feel like just kind of attached to me, and they're wiping my tears. And it's just hard to leave because what started out as being a very negative feeling that I felt and hesitancy ended up being my favorite part of the trip. And I just think that goes to show that when things are hard and things are scary, God is at work in all of that. And He reveals so much to you during those times. But I had several moments.
That was just one of a
like
few.
That. But it was just, He definitely works and stretches you in ways that you never could imagine. And it's good. In the end, you can look back and be thankful for that. So.
And you survived.
I survived. I did not fall off the side of a mountain.
Yes.
Thought I would do that a couple times, but
And it really does grow you as we come back, and we can reference back to those things too. And now we do have a saying between us that when those moments come up, and I say, remember the Romas.
Yeah.
And she remembers like, oh yeah, this was a really scary situation, but God was present in all of that. Not only was present, but worked through that. And it was such a blessing. So yeah, so cool.
Yeah. I think that was like the hardest thing we did there in a lot of ways. Going into it was like just the not knowing what we're getting ourselves into, but coming out of it, I think that was like the most rewarding day we had the whole trip. Yeah.
All right, so you guys all know at Manna Church we have the 3 pillars: love God, love each other, and love the world. So in what ways did you learn to love God or see God's love more through this trip?
I think the loving each other part, I think we could start with just even our group that we were with. Like, I think, when you put a group of people together that you don't know really well, that can be, challenging. You're trying to get used to different personalities, but just knowing that you're all there for one purpose and, you love each other and you want to share that not only with your own core group that's out there on the mission, but then be an example of that for outside the people that you're working with, and showing that love to, the leaders and their church members and people in the community as well. But just being a good example in your group, and then for the outside people as well.
I know for me, the love God and love the world kind of meshed together in one for me. Towards the end, we were, looking back and reflecting on different things that we'd gone through and different things that we'd learned. And, like Jamie said with the kids, you don't need a translator with the kids, because laughter and joy is universal. And, same thing with Katie treating the people that were in pain or sick. We can all understand being sick and being in pain. Like it feels the same for all of us, no matter the language. And, just going through the different things that, just kind of transcends language barriers and, no matter countries or whatever. But just looking back and seeing that the most universal thing in this trip and in any trip that I've been on is just God's love for us and for everybody, and how easy it is once you get in there to show it. And, you don't, I think it was St. Francis of Assisi that said, preach the gospel wherever you go, and if necessary, use words, and we were there showing them love, just through, giving them some antacids or some multivitamins, or kicking a ball with them, or, I've got several pictures. I was checking them in and doing vitals, and I've got pictures where I'm just sitting there and there's 4 kids hanging off of me, and they're just, I'm just playing with them, and they're drawing on the paper, and, they were talking to me and I was talking to them, and we didn't know what each other was saying, but, they were having a blast. And it was really neat to just see God move in a way. And he used us. He didn't need us, but he used us, and then he helped us to just translate everything through a way that everybody understood. Again, love, you can always feel that. The care, you can feel that. The concern, and it just showed how that all kind of wraps up together. So.
I want to piggyback on that. When I talked with the Virgin Honeys after the trip, one of the things they had said was, a man who had come to clinic said, "I have never felt more cared for by a doctor in my life." And he's like, no one has ever sat with me and just really looked at everything or looked at all of my issues. They'll look at one issue and give me an answer, but she sat with me and she listened and she looked at my whole person. And to give someone that kind of love is a really special treat.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's just like, I feel like God's given me this gift to practice medicine, right? Like it's, he's the one that opened the doors and like gave me this knowledge to be able to go to school and, practice. And it's like, who am I to like keep that to myself? Like, why can't I just share that love and do it for like His glory? And just that is my love, like being able to like, that's, if you get down to my root passion, that is where I am at, like home the most, is just being one-on-one with the patients and just talking to them, getting to know them a little bit, and then really getting down to the root of their problem and being able to minister to them that way. You know, whether it's mind, body, spirit, it's that is where I feel like I'm alive the most. And it's an honor to be able to do that.
How did this trip impact your personal faith?
I don't think you can go on a mission trip without impacting your faith somehow. I think that it's just a matter of what it does. Like last year was really cool. Just God was showing us that He can move in ways that you just don't expect, which was really cool. This year was totally different, and it was hard for me having to lead the trip because there's only so much we can control over here, especially when you're doing like planning. There's only so many things, like, you know, we rely on our mission partner to be exactly that, a partner, right? And so we you know, they set up the transportation in the country. They figure out where we're going to stay and set up the lodging and all that sort of stuff. And you don't really have a lot of control over it. And we have planning meetings. We talk through a lot of it, what's going on, but things always change, especially like this year, because we were going to Greece. You know, that's not their home territory. And so they don't have as many connections and stuff. And so like even when we got in Greece, we were still trying to figure out exactly where everyone was staying, like the first night we got there. And we were gonna be in apartments where we were all kind of together, but then like Doug and Debbie ended up being kind of on the other side of town, and we were supposed to be in like 2 different buildings, and then found a new apartment in the same building. And it works out, and it wasn't an issue. It was just one of those things that nothing was locked in stone, right? And I think sometimes in Americans, like, we want to know exactly what's going to happen, but you almost have to just let God, like, trust God. Okay, we need a place to stay. God's going to provide a place to stay. And then like even going to getting from Greece back to Albania, we didn't really have the transportation kind of ironed out right away until like we were getting ready to go back to Albania. And again, it was one of those things of just trying to figure out how things are going to go. And we had to get rental cars to get us into the mountains several days, and we had to go off and figure out how to do that. And we were going to stay in this little village called Lania, and there was a hotel we were going to stay at, and the owner was trying really, really hard to like have the hotel ready for us because it wasn't done. I don't know if they were building it or renovating it, but they were trying really, really hard. But they called us at the last minute and were like, yeah, we can't, it's not going to be ready. Sorry, we can't, we don't have anywhere for you to stay. So we're like, okay. So we were like changing game plans last minute. So it was one of those things where like the whole trip, like just things that you thought kind of were figured out or you had an idea, like would just constantly change. And you just really had to trust God. Be like, okay, God, I need a place to stay tonight. I need a ride back to Albania. Like, I'm going to pray that you provide something. And He showed up every time. And it was one of those things where the team would come up to me. They're like, so what are we doing next? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just praying. I'm trusting God's going to figure it out. Because I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm trying, but I don't know. And it was kind of funny, but it was one of those things where it just really makes you like just lean on Him, be like, okay, if this is your will, you're going to take care of it. I just got to trust that I was like, I'm not comfortable with it. Like, I want to have a plan. I want to know what's happening next, but you got to do it, I guess. There's only so much I can do. Right?
One of the things that I love, like the more I engage with different cultures, is recognizing that, God is the God of the whole world and of every culture. And, we're so used to engaging with Him through our own cultural perspective of what's right and how things should go, what that looks like to be in order, to have things done to excellence. And then when we engage with older cultures who are equally pursuing God but have radically different value systems, just how that changes the way that we interact with those. And like, okay, like, is that actually important? Or do I let that go? Like, and you gotta get to see God in a different way when you get to see Him through another culture's perspective.
It's really cool. We had a few instances last year where it was one of those things where it was like the American way versus the Albanian way. And it's just kind of funny every time you go back, because we're very much like a driven, like, let's plan it out, let's do it, let's be productive. And then Albania is much more relational. They're more interested in the personal relationships and like looking after each other and spending time together. Like Matt said, like just sit and have coffee and just talking and
See where the day
yeah,
is.
exactly. And so it is really interesting because again, God accomplishes a lot of His work through His people. And some of his people are Albanian, and they do it the Albanian way. And it may not be the way that we would do it, but it's God's still getting the work done. It's just cool to see how they do it. And yeah, you really have to just put a lot of faith in him that it's going to get done one way or the other. And then as long as you do it his way, right? You're building relationships, you're encouraging them, you're doing his will. Like he'll take care of the rest. It's really that simple, even though it's not. Because I'll tell you what, there were a lot of sleepless nights where I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't want to have this conversation in the morning. But it all worked out. It was good. Yeah.
And I would say for the person that might be listening that hasn't been on a vision trip, mission trip, or anything else like that, especially because we have so many military in our community, myself included, that have traveled the world before and seen a whole bunch of different cultures and appreciated different cultures. So it's kind of like, well, I already have that check in the box. We're serving here at the local church, and when going to church transitions from going to church to receive something to actually going to church every Sunday to serve, or throughout the week, when this kind of becomes your passion, well, I've already got that check in the box. It's completely different when you actually go do those two things together in a different country. So it really is amazing to serve alongside the people that are over there, that are on the front lines. And so now you're starting to appreciate already, wow, this is a whole nother level of service. This is a sacrificial level of service that these people do that's more than just serving, on the welcome team or with Man of Kids or something like that. This is a whole life. Like they have given everything.
Every minute, yeah.
Yes, exactly. To where sleep is just an option
Yes.
for many folks, and
to their detriment.
sometimes, but it's really though. So I'm just saying that because a lot of times we can get comfortable, especially being in a military community where we've served our country, we've served our church, we have traveled overseas. So it's like, I've already kind of done that stuff. This is like a whole new different thing to experience. So I would encourage anybody that's thinking about it to definitely take it on, because it's just really neat. It will increase your appreciation, not only for your own faith, but for the faith of others and the work that they're doing overseas. It's amazing. It really is.
I think another key thing that we saw on this trip that was really, it should be obvious, but it's not, was just so the way the trip went, right? We went to Greece the first couple days, and that was, like I said, we were in different places. We weren't all co-located, so getting together in the morning, having a meeting and prayer and devotional time, was just very logistically difficult, and so it really kind of got difficult to do. And then we would have our schedule for the day, but everything in Albania is flexible. The schedule would change. We'd get up earlier than we were supposed to get up, or we'd stay out later than we were supposed to stay up doing work or whatever. And we never knew when we were going to move from one place to another sometimes. And so it was a bit tricky to get together and have that devotional time and that intentional time to pray over what we're about to do and just focus on God, bring the Holy Spirit into it, and actually march out His will with Him alongside of us. And we were really trying our best to do that, but it was almost impossible the first couple of days to just find that time with everything else going on. We were already running on 3 or 4 hours of sleep every night, and
Which is not normal.
yeah, definitely not normal.
I don't
This
want
was
to scare people.
this was way not normal. It was just the way everything kind of got scheduled, and things would push back, and the next thing you know, when we were supposed to get back at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, get some rest, we were getting back at 11, 12. It was definitely. As a whole nother thing. But so it's interesting because we all started getting very worn out a little bit and almost chippy. And I'm gonna say chippy.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, get a little chippy at times.
We'll use that
Sure.
one now.
It was tense in a few moments. There was a bit of a tiff, I think, by Sunday, and then I think there was another one on Monday, and yeah, it was. But so finally, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, we finally were no. We're done. We are going to have our devotional time in the morning. We're delaying the clinic until later in the morning. We are going to have our intentional devotional time. And it was the best thing we did for the whole trip, because after that, we made sure to do it every day, was actually meet in the morning and do worship and devotional and pray before we went into anything we did. Because if we're not there, doing it for God and doing it the way He wants us to do it, why the heck are we doing it in the first place, right? And it was really amazing to see just the dynamic of the trip change from the first half when we were not really prioritizing. I don't say we weren't prioritizing. I think our hearts were in the right place. We just didn't we were too overscheduled to where we didn't have the time to actually slow down and focus on what he wanted us to do. And once we finally did that, the whole dynamic shifted. We were still running on 3 hours of sleep, but our attitudes were totally different. There was so much more joy and peace about what we were doing. And just like the results of what was happening were just better because he was blessing it more. And it was really important just to see the difference of, hey, if you invite the Holy Spirit in and you're serving God and doing it his way, like it's totally different than if you're just doing it yourself, right? And that's so important. And I think that was one of the biggest things we saw on the trip was we couldn't have finished that trip without it. And honestly, this trip was, I don't want to scare people off, but I think if you had taken any other team, I have to say this is a huge testament to the people in this room and their faith. I think if you had taken any other team there, especially those non-Christian trip, I think half the team would have left halfway through this trip because it's like, I don't need this in my life. This is a little stressful this time. But no, by the end of the trip, I mean, it was so much better. I mean, everyone still wants to talk about it, so obviously it wasn't that bad. But yeah. But no, you gotta lead from the right place every time. That's so important.
What did you learn about yourself through this experience?
I think one of the little nuggets that I had was, I remember back to kind of Sharice's comment when Dr. Doug, like his wife, got sick and like the clinic, I felt that pressure like fall on me because I was going to be the only medical provider. And we got up to the mountain town that we were supposed to be at. And we...
Just ignore the leaf blower of the Holy Spirit.
I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
And so we got up to the mountain town and I was exhausted. And I just like step out and they had this really great meal planned for us. And I know that like meals there take like an hour or two. It's not just like hurry up and eat. It's an entire experience.
Yeah.
And so we had to sit there and eat. And then I was going to have to, like, we were going to see patients after that. And I was just like, oh man, this night is going to drag on forever. Because we didn't get there until 1 or 2, and then we had to eat, which is going to take until 3 or 4, and then we were starting to see clinic after that, and I know it was going to be up until the night, and like Katie goes to bed. Katie goes to bed at 8 o'clock every night, okay? Like Dylan goes to bed, then Katie goes to bed. And this was pushing way past her bedtime, and I get cranky past 8 o'clock. And so I remember like getting out of the vehicle and I was not in the best of mood, and I just kind of like look up and I'm like, God, I'm gonna need your strength to get through this because I am not good. Like this is gonna be totally you because I have nothing left right now. And he was just with me and he gave me that strength to like get through the clinic, and I was in a great mood and I had that joy, and it was actually like the best clinic night because we got to do clinic in the dark, which is like year two for two.
Glow party.
I know, right? Because I got to do it in Albania the year before too, and it just kind of I met yeah. So it just being able to like find God in those like little moments and just like asking the Holy Spirit, like just if you're lacking anywhere, be like, hey. And just, hey, can you be with me with this? Can you give me the strength to like get through this? Just those little moments, and just like thanking him for that, and it's just little moments that count.
So with me, like I got an injury early on.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna talk too much about that. But it was bad enough that Justin was like, yeah, you can stay here at the hotel while we go up into the mountains, and then we'll come back down and we'll get you. And there's part of me that was like, oh, air-conditioned hotel. There's a pizza place right across the way. There's also the place with the amazing pasta. Like, I could hang out. That would be fine, And I was like, wait a second. That is not what I'm here for. I was like, no. I was like, I'm going to be in pain either way, so I can either be in pain in the hotel, like playing games on my phone, or I can be in pain seeing like Albania and seeing where Peter walked and seeing, all these things I would have missed out on. And, so for me, it was just that little like nudge from God of like, you're going to be in pain either way. So why don't you be in pain and do what you're called here to do rather than hanging out in the hotel. So that was my kind of push, kind of from God to just, hey. So that was good for me.
It was a wild ride too. So Sharissa got injured Sunday night.
Yeah,
Was it
the
yeah, it was
first-
The
early
very
in
night, the first night.
first night.
in
The first
Albania. Yeah.
In Greece.
And so the first thing we did, the first night in Greece. And so the first thing we did when we got to Albania was it was getting worse. And so we were like, okay, you're going to the hospital. And so that was a whole experience in itself. Getting to go to Albania hospital, that was great.
So I ended up getting blood poisoning and then MRSA.
Again, non-normal for the listener. Non-normal. Yes.
For me, my missionary bingo card is just crazy. So got to check those. I didn't even know it was on my card, but got to check those boxes. So nobody else needs to worry about that. That's just me.
But we handled it with
Yes.
the Albania hospital.
Yes.
Like Dr. Doug and I handled it. It was great. It was fine.
Yeah, it was great having a medical staff. But it was amazing just still, even afterwards, like as soon as we got back from the hospital, she's in a wheelchair and she's rolling around helping the pharmacy, rolling around talking to Albanians. Like it was great. I mean, she was like, everyone was like, Doug especially was like, no, she needs to go back to the hotel. She needs to get rest. I was like, I'm not going to say no. So,
Have you tried to tell Sharissa no?
if she wants to come, it was like she could hang out. And so sure enough, she's sitting there rolling around the clinic. And then again, was feeling good, went to the mountains, and just everywhere she could help, she was helping. Even like with everything else, it's like most people would have just been in the hotel, be like, I'm just gonna hang out, I'm good. Like it was amazing.
I was real happy to find that wheelchair though, because it was hurting to walk those first couple of days. But I was like, they have a wheelchair.
Yeah, it didn't get hurt getting bumped to the front of the line going through all the airports either.
Yeah.
But
So we did get to take advantage of that because thankfully Matt and all of his wisdom, Mr. Pilot over here, was like,
Spend a little bit of time in airports.
spend some time in airports. He's like, if we have to run to catch a flight, or if we have to go like from one end to the other, you're not going to be able to keep up. You're going to die. And he's like, can I please just talk you into getting a wheelchair? And I was like, and then of course I have Micah, my husband, saying the same thing. He's like, babe, you can't. He's like, take the help. And I was like, okay, fine. So we get this wheelchair, and then we discover that apparently the wheelchair was like the golden ticket because the people pushing the wheelchair, they didn't want to wait because they had other people that they had to go help. So they're like, okay, sorry, there's a huge line. Sorry, we're going to the front. And I'm like, they're all with me. So we got the evil eye a couple times.
oh yeah, there's a couple people, especially like security and at the airport, they were like, they're all with her?
I'm like, yes, this is all my family. We're all traveling together. So God used it for good, or we used it for good. It was used.
That's great.
Same reservation, it counts.
Yes.
Anything you want to add to that?
I would have too. It's okay. I would have too.
Huron, what did you learn about yourself through this experience?
I can do hard things. Yeah. Just trust in God and ask for the
Hard
help.
things can be good things.
Absolutely. Yep. You said that's perfect.
Well, and again, she's not going to tell you. Don't hate me. So we had to go up some pretty sketchy roads up into the mountains, and Jamie's afraid of heights and roads without barriers. Exactly. And so poor Jamie, that when we finally got to the very top of the mountain, I'm sorry. We get to the top of the mountain, and there's this cross that they had built. And so we wanted to, I'll take a picture from the cross. Jamie got out of the car, and she kissed the ground.
I told y'all I would.
She was like, we made it to the top, and she literally got a picture somewhere of her kissing the ground. She's like, we made it, thank you, Lord. But she had her seat laid back, and Matt was talking to her, and they had praise and worship music going in their car, and we were all praying for Jamie, and it was just so funny because she got out of that car and she was like, thank you, Lord, and she kissed the ground, and but yeah, I mean, definitely got pushed out of her comfort zone so much on this trip, and she stepped up every single time, and it was so great to be able to watch and just to be able to be there, and be with you to see you do that. It was amazing. It was
Absolutely.
really cool.
Yeah. And poor Tom. Tom didn't know he was going to have to drive so much in Albania.
He did a great job.
Yeah.
He was good.
Especially with you in the car. I'm sure he was extra careful. Yeah. Yeah. Taking care of y'all.
Well, and Tom was the best with trying different things.
Oh, yeah.
Tom, the only thing he drew the line at, he tried everything. I mean, everything. The only time he drew the line was when we got to, was it Garbova that we had the pizza? Where was it? So they went and got us, they had a pizza place that stayed open late for us because we were coming in super late. And they were like, okay, what kind of pizzas do you want? So we were like, okay, we'll take a cheese, a pepperoni, and everything, and, you know, something else. So we had a cheese one. They heard pep for pepperoni, so we got a pepper pizza, nothing but green peppers. And we're like, sure, close enough. And then there was an everything pizza. And then there was a pizza. They opened the box, and we were like, what is that? Tuna fish pizza. Tuna fish
That was
pizza.
Besnick's pizza. He ordered that one for him.
I know, seriously, we all, and it's so funny because out of everything that Tom tried, like, we all drew the line at tuna fish pizza. We were like, nope, that's the one that's over the line. Exactly, like goat, no problem. All kinds of weird drinks and stuff, no problem. But drew the line at tuna fish pizza.
Yep.
I mean, at least you knew what it was.
But they were so I get it. They were like, you guys don't want any of this? We're like, no, you can have it. They're like, really? And we're like, yeah, please take it. We're not going to touch that.
Going back to your question, it kind of goes back to the past couple questions. One of the things that I really actually was able to take away from this, because there were so many challenges on this trip, and before a lot of times I think folks head out on one of these trips, you know, there are those challenges ahead of the trip too, and it's kind of, you hear like, oh, it's more challenging now because God's going to do greater things, which is a very valid point. We need to work through a lot of those things. And then once you're on the trip, it's like, oh, today's really challenging, but boy, it's really going to be. And for me, to be really honest, a lot of it, coming off the trip initially, especially, I didn't really feel like there was this aha moment where the skies opened up and I heard angelic music or something like that. And it was kind of like, well, that didn't happen. What happened? What happened? But what that showed me in my faith and learning something about myself is that God continues to work. I don't have to have some mountaintop experience, you know, is that God is going to continue to use those things in those moments. I'm just faithfully called to serve him. And guess what? It's not going to be a mountaintop experience every time. And when it isn't, I can't get disappointed. And so I think that was kind of one of those things of just learning to live life with God and learning to live life in faith and just continuing to walk out what God's calling me to do, is that sometimes it's going to be great, sometimes it's not, you know. And you can see that throughout the Bible too, you know. It's not just a Matt Perry experience, you know. This is a real life experience. So I think that was one of my biggest takeaways for myself, is that, you know, sometimes we talk about the challenges of this trip, but God still was able to use it, whether I really experienced some huge moment or not.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so before we went on the trip, one of the times I was praying for the team, I had like a vision of like special forces team members, but it was like everybody on the team, like going in and like kicking down doors and like clearing rooms and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was just a reminder of like, God picks everybody for this mission field, right? It's a mission. It's you're going into a war. It's spiritual warfare, and we're the soldiers on the battlefield in a lot of ways. And I thought the same thing with Matt. Like, there was so much spiritual warfare and so many things going on leading up to the trip that I was like, man, this trip's going to be incredible. Like, God's going to do some amazing things. And I kind of had a similar experience where last year, like, I wasn't expecting anything, and I went to the trip and I saw God move in crazy ways last year where I was like, this is amazing. And I really thought like I'd see the same thing this year, and I didn't see a lot of it, like you said. And it was kind of hard for me, honestly, in a lot of ways. Was, okay, well, we did all this work, we prepared, we went, we did it, but then, and there was a lot of spiritual warfare, and we pushed through all of it and still got there, and we didn't see anything super crazy. I'm not saying that there weren't people touched and we didn't encourage people there and we didn't do good work. I'm not saying any of that happened. And again, there's a lot of stuff that happened on the back end that you don't see. But it's like warfare, right? You're not there to win the battle every time. It's about winning the war, and there's a bigger picture. And I think that was the hard thing, is sometimes you go in, you fight the fight, and then you move on and you get out, and you didn't necessarily see the war get won there, but you were still part of that, you know, thing happening. And I think that was a hard part for me this trip, was really knowing like, okay, you expect to go in and fight every time, you expect to win, and it doesn't always look like that. And sometimes you gotta know there's a bigger picture, and you're just a piece of that, and it humbles you in a lot of ways. And yeah, so it was interesting.
That's yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was like, it's not the end of the story. Just because you came home, the story's not over. and you don't know what God is doing in the hearts of the people that you talk to and what's happening next for them in God's story.
I think even in our own lives, God, taught us a lot of things and trained us for what the next phase for us is. And I think he helped us, get the partners over there and the church there, help push them through the next phase of what they're working on. Because, one of the big things that we haven't really talked a whole lot about is that, we mentioned that their 2 kids had surgery like within 2 weeks, or with a week of each other, only a couple weeks before we went. But one of the things was they, as we were planning, they were telling us about we were talking to them regularly and I talk with my hands. We were talking about, what was just going on in their lives and all the things they were going through. And we know they would tell us that they were having these issues and their kids were having surgery and they needed money to help, pay for the surgeries, and that they were still short on money to finish their church building. And so we were like spreading the word back here about, hey, they still need money to do this, or, they're going through these issues. And it was really cool because we ended up getting them connected with people in our church who went through similar like medical conditions that their daughter went through. And so they could connect and talk and encourage them. And then not only that, but like we had mentioned to other people about like the church funds that they needed and the surgeries they needed. And within like 24 hours, they had all of it paid for. We're talking like thousands and thousands of dollars, and it was all raised and paid for. So it was, if we weren't talking to them regularly and going on, like planning to go on this trip, like maybe that wouldn't even happen. So there's all these cool things that still happen, and God's still doing work and making the right connections. So there's always something going on. You just don't necessarily always see it.
And God's measurement is different from our measurement.
Oh yeah.
So.
All right, last question. What would you tell someone who is considering going on a vision trip?
Go. Easy, go. So here's the thing. Go on a mission trip. I think everybody needs to go on one, unless they just absolutely don't feel called. And you're going to go on your first one, and then either you are going to go and you're going to be like, okay, I did it, check that box, had that experience, we're good, we're moving on. Or you're going to go, and as soon as you land, you're like, when's the next one? What can I do now? Where can I go next? Where can I help out? Like, I don't want to say it's addictive, but it really
But
is.
it is.
Going to
But
another,
it is.
but it is. Going to another country and just being able to watch God move. And this goes back into a little bit of like their faith compared to ours. Like just watching people that have so little have such big faith. And I come home and I'm like, God, my air conditioner broke. Are you kidding me? A whole week with no AC, which in Florida is, it's kind of a big thing. But I'm thinking back to, one of the villages we visited, the government was fixing to divert the stream that ran through the village a different way to use it for them. And in theory, that's going to wipe out that whole village. And I asked them when we were there, I was like, what's the plan for it? And they're like, God will provide. And I'm like, okay. I guess I'm just too American because I'm like too American, too military, too something. Because I'm like, no, you need a plan. Like you need a X, Y, Z. And they're like, no, God's gonna provide. And I was just like, okay, God will provide. And it's just, it's so humbling.
On that note, like this teeny tiny village that we visited, there's about 50 homes. At least there was the first time I went, and that was years ago. It may have shrunk.
Yeah.
But they have been there since like before the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Like they have just hung on, they have been strong. They have this like deep history and root, and it's like, this is our land. And so there's this really deep, like, we're staying. And
God's gonna provide.
God's going to provide.
Well, it's not just that, but they only live off of what God provides. Like they don't go into the world to buy stuff very often. Like if they need to build their house, they go in the woods and they chop down trees and they get rocks and they build their house. And if they need food, they raise animals, they grow plants, and then they like they don't buy stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like whatever God gives them is what they have. And so it's a big thing now, because especially with them wanting to divert the water, like one of the things they were talking about was, oh yeah, we'll divert the water and then you can pay us to get it back. And they're like, well, now I got to pay for something that God's already always given me. Like I've always had, like what? It's so foreign to them. In America, we're like, oh yeah, you got to pay for everything. But over there, they're like, what? They're like, no. So yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, they just trust that
faith.
they're like, God's always provided. God's going to keep providing it. So yeah, it's amazing. But
Yeah.
I would say for a mission trip, I just want to say you go with a caveat, right? If God calls you, go. If God's not calling you there, you got to be really careful about going, because that's a good way to get in trouble. And I think I think he's given us the Great Commission, right? There's already the calling of go into the world, make disciples. I think his will's already there and his calling's already there, but you got to pray about it. You got to make sure that you're ready to go. But don't take that as an opportunity to say, well, God's not calling me this one, I'm not going to go either. Because it's really easy to fall into that trap of just never doing anything because you're just waiting for God to give you this smack on the head that it's your turn. But yeah, I mean, again, like we talked about before, it's so important to start at the source, right? Start with him, start with his will, figure out what it is, and then go from there. And definitely make sure that you're staying in the Spirit, that you're praying through it, that you're marching with him and not for him. There's a big difference there. And I think it's easy to fall in that trap on mission trips. And I've heard many stories about people getting in trouble because they went places where God didn't call them to go, and they were doing it on their own. And so, but again, if he's leading you there, he's calling you, like if you even have a second thought about like, maybe God's calling, go, like do it. It's so rewarding. It's amazing.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I feel like the Holy Spirit, if you have that little voice,
That little
it's
tug.
like, that's your voice. Okay? So, like, just listen to it and go.
You just got to be prepared to give up a lot. Because like I said, once you go, it'll change your life and everything will be radically different afterwards. And it does. It becomes addictive. But I don't think out of like because it's actually addictive. I think it's just how we're built and how we're designed. God's calling us to do his work and his ministry and see his glory. And you go do these mission trips and you see God move in ways that you don't see that often in your normal life. And it's really cool to see. And you're like, you see God work through you and you're like, I want that always. Like, I don't want to watch him do work through other people and in other ways. Like, I want to be a part of it. And you just want to become part of it from now on. And you just never want to change. Yeah. So it's super cool.
That's really good,
Yeah.
yeah. Any final thoughts?
Can't wait for next year. Can't wait for next year.
All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for sharing.
Go Albania!
Whoop, whoop.